One of my biggest problems with the official Nintendo Switch controllers are the D-pads. The Joy-Con just don't have one. They have these tiny little buttons split up. And neither the Joy-Con nor the Pro Controller have them in an ideal spot for dedicated play. It's pretty much impossible to play the Joy-Con like this. It's a lot more comfortable on the Pro Controller, but because of the angle your thumb is forced to tilt, I found myself hitting diagonals instead of straight left or right. And that could mean instant death. Luckily, we've got some retro controller options with the D-pad in the perfect spot, and it is very exciting. Some of these solutions take a bit of work, but one of them might end up being my favorite Switch controller, even over the official Pro Controller. Initially, I didn't want to do 2 controller videos back to back, but I was just so damn excited when I got these guys. Oh! Is this the... Thank God! Yes, this is the one. Okay, so they sent us... Is this... Ooh! All right, so this is great. All right, I am very happy now. So 8BITDO did send us these controllers for free, but make no mistake, this is not a sponsored video. And even if it was, you know I'd say whatever the hell I want to anyway. We also have some non-8BITDO stuff that we need to talk about because they're not the only game in town, but they do hold a firm grasp on a niche market, and deservedly so. Retro-style controllers are a fun novelty. It's fun to hold a piece of history. It's fun to have that retro aesthetic. I like that. But practicality is most important. $25, sure, but when you're spending $35 and even upwards of $50 for some of these controllers, it damn well better be practical. 2D side-scrolling games are playable with a thumbstick, but you get much more control with a proper directional pad. This level of control is imperative for some of the more difficult games, and I take my 2D side-scrollers very seriously. Nintendo created the D-pad with the Game & Watch Donkey Kong game back in 1982. They also patented the technology. It was innovative because the middle of the D-pad rested on a ball joint, allowing the entire plus-shaped surface to pivot to the desired directional button. Their patent was so specific that it allowed for a lot of workarounds. All copycats had to do was change a minor thing here or there. For instance, Sega's D-pad had the ball joint on the bottom controller part, so inverted. For the most part, this is why throughout the years consoles had garbage D-pad designs, except for Nintendo's. And then we got to the Switch. But that's okay. We're gonna fix this. Me and you. Maybe not you, I have nothing to do with this. You're inanimate. Yes. Make it right. Let's start with the most interesting, the N30 Pro. It's also the most expensive, but there's a good reason for that. It has all of the buttons that a Switch Pro controller has, including home and share buttons hidden on the bottom here. You also probably noticed the thumbsticks at the bottom. This ensures that the D-pad is still the star of the show, but the thumbsticks aren't too far out of reach. And they still feel great. They are in the same spot that they are on the PS4 controller. In fact, they're even the same size, shape, and feel as the PS4 controller's thumbsticks. What you might not have noticed is that this controller has rumble, which is not as loud as other reviewers said. I'd say it's fairly quiet. Maybe they've fixed this? It also has motion controls, and the motion controls work surprisingly well. I'm very impressed. Playing Mario Odyssey or Splatoon with this controller feels just fine. So if you need a versatile controller, this is a great option. But of course, this controller shines with 2D games. This D-pad is excellent. It feels exactly like the D-pad for a Super Nintendo. Surely you can tell it looks exactly like it. It's even the same exact size, but guys, you don't understand. It feels exactly like a Super Nintendo D-pad does. Maybe a little bit tighter, but that's a welcome change because it's newer. And of course, it comes in a Super Famicom version if you're outside of the US and repulsed by our American heritage. Maybe you're more of an NES person like I am. Well, lucky for you, there's the N30 Pro. It also has all of the same buttons. It's thinner and more portable than the N30 Pro, but there are some compromises. The shoulder buttons are laid out horizontally, which isn't ideal. Also, the thumbsticks don't feel too great. They're fine, but compared to the N30 Pro, they leave a little to be desired. I also keep accidentally taking screenshots when I pick up the controller because of where the screenshot button is. This controller is slightly cheaper because it doesn't have motion controls or rumble, but only slightly cheaper. Guys, it's insane how close the D-pad feels to an actual NES D-pad. It's an exact reproduction. It's amazing work. I think the controller might be out of production because it's only available on Amazon through third parties, but if you can get your hands on one, it's only a little bit cheaper than the SN30 Pro. Since you're missing out on motion controls, I would say this is only worth it if you love the NES that much more than the SNES, or you need a super thin controller. I would have liked a Famicom version to go with my Switch here, but who's complaining? I'm not complaining, certainly not me. Now, if you don't want to spend this much on a controller, maybe you already have a Pro controller and you just want an extra controller specifically for 2D games, then 8BITDO does have some cheaper options. The SNES 30 is only $35. These names are really confusing. This one gets rid of the thumbsticks, no more home screen or screenshot buttons, and only one shoulder button on each side. But that's all you need for Sonic Mania or Celeste. Other than the missing inputs and the exclusion of motion and rumble, it feels identical to the SN30 Pro, which is identical to an SNES controller. For just $15 more, I still think the SN30 Pro is more worth it because you get so much more for your money. If you already have a Pro controller, you can use the SN30 Pro as a second player for Rocket League or Mario Kart, and you never know when a 2D game's gonna require those extra shoulder buttons. But if you're trying to go for the cheapest option, the SNES 30 ain't bad. And if you're more of an NES guy, the NES 30 is even cheaper, if you can find it. Hey, what's up with the lack of NES support? If you're going for authenticity, this controller feels way more like an NES controller than the N30 Pro. The buttons are even concave in the same way. You get the extra X and Y buttons, but that's a welcome change. Perhaps this is gonna be the controller of choice for a potential Mario Maker game that's seeming more and more likely? I don't know. It depends on how many buttons that game's gonna require. This D-pad is unmatched. I love that NES style D-pad, and it's insane how much it feels exactly like an NES D-pad. But who knows? I'm glad that I have all of these options to choose from for when that game comes out. All of these controllers connect wirelessly to the Switch fairly easily, but connecting and reconnecting them all could pose some problems. They all connect using different button configurations, so I was getting confused when testing them all. They all work with various devices and require you to place them in different device modes. I would recommend just leaving it in Switch mode once you have it set up. Also, none of these will wake up your Switch, so you'll have to get off your ass, walk over to your Switch, and physically hit the power button to wake it up. Or use a separate controller to wake it up. Now, these aren't the only options available to play your Switch games with a proper D-pad. There's a mod available that replaces the entire shell of the left Joy-Con and overlays a D-pad over those buttons. I did the Basstop shell swap once without the D-pad. That, it was a fucking nightmare. I'm not doing that again. But lucky for us, Spawn Wave suffered through it so that we don't have to.
Yay! Now, if we're going to talk about D-pads on the Switch, we have to at least talk about what seems to be the most popular D-pad, at least currently, and that's the D-pad that comes with the Basstop shell on the Nintendo Switch left Joy-Con. This D-pad just replaces those 4 buttons with one piece of plastic, so it still has that tactile feel when you push any one direction, whereas most D-pads technically have a rubber membrane underneath that is set up for rolling D-pads. This one is more of just a clicky membrane D-pad, which means it's going to feel a little different than your typical D-pad. So when you kind of roll your thumb around it, it'll just be very clicky, and it might not feel completely right in this case. You're also going to notice the center is heavily indented down, and then it kind of curves up in an incline to each edge of any one direction. It's kind of a weird feeling when you're first using it. However, I did notice it kind of helps to keep your thumb from slipping off of the edge, although I do think it's a little better to have some sort of arrow indent on each one just so you can kind of grip and feel where you are. The D-pad still being kind of far down the Joy-Con does make it difficult when in portable mode because you still have to kind of have that hook feel to your thumb when you want to switch to it quickly. Jumping over to the Joy-Con grip makes things a little easier since you do have that nice grip underneath, and then you can basically just drop your thumb down without too much issue. If you're going to be in portable mode, might be a little harder to switch between the two. Just go into the game knowing you're, okay, I'm going to use the D-pad, or I'm going to exclusively use the joystick. I think I'm okay with the placement overall on the left side. It's the right side where I think I'd rather see the buttons and the joystick kind of shift around, because then at least I would have pretty much symmetry across where the level of my thumbs are. Also, if you're wondering, you can press all directions at the same time. There's barely any pivot, and that's not very good considering Nintendo generally makes it so that it does pivot, and it's very hard to press all 4 buttons at the same time. Look at something like a Nintendo controller or a Super Nintendo controller, you'll see exactly what I mean. Finally, the D-pad itself feels good. It's not very cheap feeling. I would say the shell of the Joy-Con they send you is a little more cheap feeling depending on the one you get. What I would compare this to is something like the 3DS D-pad. If you used one of those D-pads, you've probably used this one then. I will say this is a good D-pad overall. There's just one major roadblock, and that's that you would need to shell your entire Joy-Con yourself if you want to do this for the cheapest price possible. Now, if you don't really mind pricing, you can buy these straight up on eBay already done. You can actually go on there, and they do range. Most of them sell in pairs for anywhere from $120 to $130. However, the shell being $15 to $30, and then a pair of Joy-Con controllers being $80, and then the labor, you can see how that at least makes sense to a degree if you kind of break it all down into pricing. Either way, if you're at least brave enough to attempt this, I did a whole video on it, and I don't think it's super difficult. However, if you don't have a lot of experience, I can see exactly why this might be considered hard and a big risk. If you're going to try it, buy another Joy-Con so you don't wreck your one Joy-Con that you have.
Yeah, I'm not liking the way that D-pad pivots. The Basstop D-pad shell might be your cheapest option at only $16 for the left Joy-Con or $25 for both, but if you fuck up your Joy-Con like I did, that's $80 down the hole. And like Spawnwave just said, it's not even that great. I'd say toss that $25 into one of these 8BITDO controllers. Maybe splurge if you want some of the more expensive ones, or just want a better Pro Controller alternative. There's one more controller that I wanted to toss in here. Amazon has a bunch of Pro Controller alternatives, but there's the Basstop Wireless Switch Pro Controller. This controller is important because it puts the D-pad on the top spot, which is exactly what we're looking for. It also has super loud, super rough feeling rumble, but no motion controls. It also feels like garbage overall, so don't buy this one. The N30 Pro is probably going to be my go-to for 2D games from now on because it has all of the functionality you could ever need and a home button. You don't realize how much you need the home button until it's not there anymore. I'll still use the Pro Controller for 3D games like Mario, Zelda, or Splatoon, but it's nice to know that the N30 Pro can handle stuff like that. And I may need to revisit the N30 Pro or the NES 30 if we ever get that Mario Maker sequel we so desperately need. Also, it might be great for Mighty Gun Vault Burst, but now we're getting a little too nitpicky here. It's not like I'm gonna swap out these controllers depending on what game I'm playing. I'm just gonna pick one and that's gonna be my controller. But if I like it for Mario Maker would sway me in that direction. That's how much that game controls my life. So what do you guys think about all of these retro controller options and these D-pad options? Is there anything that you want to see in these controllers, or is there anything in these controllers that you particularly like? Leave it in the comments below, at me on Twitter, all of this other social media garbage. Last week, we gave away the Hori controller that I kind of trashed, but there was still an overwhelming amount of people that signed up for that contest. And I feel really bad because that's not even that great of a controller. So this week, we are going to give away the N30 Pro. And it'll be for any region, so I'll let you pick which one. You want the US one or the international one? The link to that contest will be in the description, same thing as last time. I also referenced a bunch of other videos in this video, so I'm gonna leave a playlist right here of all of the videos that you can watch relating to this video. Also, check out Spawnwave, go subscribe to his channel, a lot of Nintendo Switch stuff over there, and he'll be in this playlist too. Also, over the weekend, I was in a video over on two-time streaming award-winning Dan Seibert's channel, talking about all of the different phases of Mario games and what we can expect from a Super Mario Odyssey 2 or just the next Mario game. So go over there and give that video a lot of love because that video needs some love. There's new videos here every single Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday. We also Twitch stream in the morning, and you can see some of these videos early over on Twitch. And we stream here on YouTube every single Wednesday night and Sunday night. We do a lot of crap. And of course, the most important things that you can do is subscribe, and thank you for that. Thank you for all these, you lovely people. And share this video with a friend who loves these 2D side scrollers as much as I do, and definitely needs a proper D-pad to play them right. Thank you guys very much. Have yourselves a very good week.